Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to this week's episode of Couch Trip Therapy for Everyday Life. That's my best friend, Eddie Reece. I'm Billy Courtright, and we're about to talk for, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 minutes about something that I'm incredibly interested in. And, there's something to be said about the mind and the body and the connection that exists between the two. Perhaps it stands to reason. Perhaps you're not sure how it works. But Eddie is going to counsel us, and we're going to have a spirited conversation about that exact topic. Where this stemmed, you may hear. You may hear as I'm speaking, and you may hear when Eddie speaks. But myself personally, I'm coming off. I'm on the backside of what was a pretty nasty bout, sinus infection, viral infection, what have you. It drove me to the doctor. I've had to get a script. And, as we record this podcast, it's just January 8th. And Eddie and I haven't recorded a podcast in a few weeks because, of Christmas Eve and Christmas Day and New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. And I've been running, man. I've been running from late November, or I'm sorry, mid-December, halfway between Thanksgiving and Christmas. I brought my family up to Chicago and saw a lot of folks and interacted with a lot of, multi-generational families and went, had a few drinks and didn't eat so great and didn't sleep so great and probably didn't take care of myself. Definitely didn't exercise as much as I would have liked. And that kind of got us right into the week where the kids entered their break. And then, of course, it was Christmas Eve. And actually, the Saturday before Christmas Eve, my family hosted our neighborhood Christmas party. So there was 75 people running through our house. And then that led to a nice, quiet, intimate Christmas Eve and Christmas Day with just my immediate family and my mother-in-law. And then that led to the week later, which was New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. And my family and I charted up to Blue Ridge to jump into a cabin with five other families. And all this to say, I got to a place where my body cried uncle. If there was a white flag waving, I would have believed it. And I just needed to be in bed for 2 days until I could speak, breathe, and feel somewhat normal. And you may hear in my voice, I'm not 100% there. So in having this kind of conversation with Eddie and kind of telling him, what I've been through, and I used the term the ringer, I thought like, why is it? Like, what is it? Is it, what's going on that, as I'm running 100 miles an hour and not sleeping so great and a little bit anxiety, a little bit, not a little bit anxious, but probably a lot anxious at times and for a lot of
Like
different reasons.
like right now.
Yeah, there you go. And then so we decided to have a conversation about a topic that I'm fascinated with, which is the mind-body connection. So Eddie, the question is, after that verbose and wordy intro and setup, is why is it that, first of all, was it possible that I became immunocompromised or susceptible to a cold or an infection as a result of my last 30 days? And if
Mhm.
so, why? And can you help us understand the connection between what's going on in our brain and in our nervous system and how our actual physical rest of our body reacts?
I'll give it a shot. First item is, when did I become your bestie? I don't have any little rope ring or anything like that. That's
Man, yeah. Well,
and you're announcing it on the air. You didn't tell me
we've
to.
coming out in 2025. Billy and Eddie.
Yeah. What this brings to mind is college. And I think a lot of people had this experience that we were on a quarterly system instead of a semester. And as soon as the break happened between quarters, a whole bunch of people would get sick. And then time for the next quarter to start, they'd be well by then. And that happened every time we changed. And I think that demonstrates that if you run yourself really hard, you're using up your body's resources, and your body needs a lot of resources. And one of those is for your immune system to be working and working well, and pathogens getting into your body and they go, and it's dead. But if you use up too many resources, then your immune system might not quite know what's going on. Um, but the biggest factor I think, in your story is that, well, kind of two. One is you got around a group of people, and anytime you get around a group of people, you're going to be passing back whatever's going on with other folks. And so you that's part of it. But of course, we're going to be around people. So you want to have as healthy a body as you can. The other thing that plays into this is that you broke your routine, and all of us are routine based. Okay? We all have a routine. And you might be saying as you listen to this, no, almost every day is different. That's your routine. If we made every day the same, you lose it. Right. We have a routine, I think, because that's about survival. That your survival part of your brain said, we did that today and we didn't die. Let's do it again tomorrow. And so when you get off of your routine, your nervous system's on higher alert than normal, burning up more glucose. Oh, and you're just uncomfortable anyway.
Right.
And so your routine is important to stick as close to that as you can when you go through the holidays and wear a mask. I mean, have I said on the show that I have long COVID?
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, I do. January 1, this past January 1, is third anniversary of getting COVID. And I've actually stopped calling it long COVID there when I can remember because it doesn't much mean anything to anybody. But what I say is I got some sort of mysterious illness and it makes me really tired and it's causing me to lose muscle mass, which is why my voice sounds like this. Early on into this mess, I lost my ability to sing. So it's odd. But if you talk to somebody else who's had problems after COVID, you'll hear all sorts of things going wrong with them. So all of that's to say, my immune system, I treat it as a compromised immune system because it's working hard, and that's part of why I'm tired all the time. So wear a mask. I mean, it might be 50, 100 years from now, but I think wearing masks, protecting ourselves will just be part of our routine because wait till we get a big fungal outbreak. That's so you're around people.
Yeah.
And we're always going to get sick, you get something.
Right, but
Um,
do you think that there's a relationship or can you explain the relationship between our lethargic lack of personal self combined with or perhaps let's just use holiday blah like depression or anxiety, and then you get yourself into a holiday situation, maybe you get anxious being around a lot of people, and
mhm,
you go to a holiday function and you've been kind of fearing it for a day or two, and then you get there and then the next day you feel like garbage.
mhm.
So what is it just as simple as, hey, you're you got low white blood cell count, you're immunocompromised anyway, you walked in, you had a germ infestation, you didn't have what it takes to fend it off, or was it truly something in the brain that kind of attracted that ailment?
There's nothing in the brain that's going to attract it. But what you're describing sounds like somebody who is at least somewhat introverted, doing something out of their routine, getting
There you go.
around a
Okay.
crowd of people. So that causes the anxiety, that causes a high alert in your nervous system, and it burns up your resources. So don't worry so much.
Yeah, I mean, the happier I am, the less sick I feel. I definitely believe that that's true. And
Oh
I'm
yeah.
and I'm one of those guys that says, "Hey, I don't get sick. I don't get sick. I don't get sick." And then I got sick.
I didn't really get sick before this, but I've had all kinds of weird, I don't call it sick. Sick to me for some reason in my upbringing is like cold, flu,
Yeah, right.
laying
Yeah,
in
fever.
bed. But yeah, having, whatever I have now, I don't call it sick.
Well, if you've had something for 3 years, it's not. It's certainly not. It's we're going
Yeah,
from a sickness or an illness to a condition or disease.
yeah, there's something weird going on. But yeah, I mean, think of the cells in your body and they're all working. They're all doing something, and they need resources to do that. And we have cells in our immune system that actually can find a cancer cell and just eat it up. And a lot of that cell movement and what they do and how they do it completely on their own. We're not up here, we're everywhere, and our cells know what to do, but they got to have the resources. And so that's why taking care of yourselves, you're taking care of this cellular mechanism that keeps you going. And there was a study quite a while ago looking at the relationship between people's general attitude about things, kind of are you more optimistic, less optimistic, whatever, and how that affected those cancer cells, and particularly the NK cells. And they found that the people that were more optimistic, the cells worked better. Less optimistic cells didn't work as well. Right. So attitude has a lot to do with it. I've had an awful lot of experience with people with cancer, one-on-one experience. And, the people who have a good attitude toward it have a much better chance. I really believe that because I think what happens chemically is if, what you're, upbeat and you're happy to be alive. You don't feel that great, but that doesn't mean you can't enjoy something or yourself and other people. And there's just kind of more of an upbeat temperament. That's what it's really about. And then somebody who's, oh God, I got this illness and oh, it's just awful.
Yeah.
Anytime we have a thought, which is a billion times a day, there's a little bit of chemical, neurological something going on.
Right.
And it just makes sense to me that if you're more of an upbeat person, that the chemical process of actually being that person is going to produce chemicals that would be good for you. And your NK cells, natural killer cells, can go after it. If you're the person who's really down and pessimistic, you're pumping chemicals in there that says, I really don't care.
Oh, wow.
And that gets to that NK cell, and it's like, no, there's a cancer cell. No, I don't care. It's just one. There's a little bit of scientific stuff to back that up, but it sounds preposterous, but it makes sense to me in terms of as a therapist, I understand how the nervous system works really well in terms of people's behavior and how they feel and how they succeed at something or fail at something. And it's basically the same thing of we've got to rewire this. So yeah, there's something to it, but
I'm reminded as you say that of Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl.
Mhm.
And in the book, essentially, if for those that haven't read it, it's brilliant. You should. But it's really about someone in the concentration camps of Auschwitz and watching people essentially give up, and and this idea that he could accurately predict after being in there for a while, to a fairly accurate degree when someone wouldn't wake up or when they just
Mhm.
mailed it in and when they were just he could almost see it. The light go
Yeah.
out is how he describes it. And then of course, Frankel survived and wrote the book and became a brilliant thought leader, I believe, on psychotherapy, if I'm not mistaken, but I could be wrong.
Mm.
But it was And there's also a similar reference of, in the 1700s, at the time of our founding fathers, when the average male age in this country was, 42, 44 years old. And yet, if you look at a lot of the signers of the Declaration of Independence and a lot of the early leaders of our nation, the statesmen, if you will, almost to a person, all lived to be, 60s, 70s, some 80 years old. And the same thing was happening in Europe with some of the greats throughout the Renaissance and so forth. And it was tied to this evidence of this purpose-driven existence, this idea that I have something left to accomplish, that I feel like I am of
Hmm.
value. And, am I correct to presume that it's that purpose and that value that lends itself to the attitude that kind of creates the better environment for fending off a cancer cell in your example?
Yeah, and this is really tricky. You don't want to ignore any parts of you who don't want to be upbeat or are not upbeat. And we say this a lot in the podcast in one way or another, but if you're not a highly optimistic person, let's say, and you decide I'm gonna be more positive. Okay. What's gonna happen is you're going to more than likely crash really hard in some not so good way to get you back to where you were. It's called homeostasis. But in my mind, it's Carl Jung's idea of when we create one side, one part of us, as I say, we also create the opposite of that. And that's called, in Jungian words, is our shadow self. And so when I talk about things like the kindness dialogue, that's what I'm talking about, is for these parts to talk to each other. So don't just go, okay, I'm going to be happy and upbeat and hey, yeah, without conferring with this part because it's going to get you. It just will. And so that's why in my mind, positive affirmations by themselves don't work because this part's over here going, I am worthy, I am good, I am worthwhile. And this part over here is just rolling his eyes. Yeah, sure you are. Okay. And that causes a battle which is burning up resources. So you have to be careful about how you do those things. You don't just become an upbeat person. You examine how it came that you're here. And some of this, optimism, pessimism, upbeat, down, some of that's just genetics. It's just how it is. I'm not naturally an optimistic person. I have to work at that. Yeah, now I can be really upbeat and happy pretty easily if I'm doing things that I'm really upbeat and happy about. But if I'm doing something I don't really want to do, it's hard to be upbeat and happy. That's one place I've worked, that here's a chore and somehow make it fun. Let's somehow make it fun. So I guess this part of my rambling adds up to you've got to pay attention to where whatever it is you want to change, what built it, what put it together, what parts are in conflict, and then learn to get those parts from conflict to collaboration and really sharing with each other and then you can work out where we want to be and how to get there, and nobody's fighting about it.
Yeah. I'm hearing you, and I'm again reminded of, and that was awesome, by the way. That was really well articulated. But I hope, well, I'm going to say it, and one day she may be mad at me, but I doubt it. So I'm reminded of a time when my wife and I were married just a few years before we had kids, and for whatever the reason, we required a fertility, exam and some treatment. And I remember, in addition to all the medicine and the chemicals and the shots and all the things you have to do, there was a meditation that was recommended by the fertility specialist, and neither Danielle nor I were meditators, I guess, any more than just kind of relaxing. But I do know that it was profound, and it was a little bit wonky at first, just the actual recognition and acknowledgement and validation of what was going on in her body. And, they had wanted her to, pay attention and focus on certain things. And it was interesting. And the good news story to this is we ended up being blessed with two beautiful boys, and all was well in the world. But the thing that struck me was what I remember about that challenge was not the medicine, it was not the shots, it was the meditation. Because I remember I would lay next to her in bed, and she would, take her earpods. We didn't have AirPods at that time. We had these ones, and she would take them out and pull out the connector so I could hear it, and I would listen to it a few times, and it was neat. And so I guess my question to you is, well, first thing, it was the first time I really saw some or believed in some validation and some real proof, at least from my point of view, not preaching, that hey, this is powerful. It works for us. I don't know if it was panacea or placebo is what I meant to say. But it worked. What can you tell me about that experience of combining focused attention and meditation and creating an environment maybe for a positive physical outcome to manifest?
Well, we could go back to our podcast about being productive.
Was that a pun intended?
Did I
Reproductive, productive?
Okay. Our culture tells us to drive as hard as we can, is achieve every possible goal and rise to the top of whatever you're doing. And nowhere in all of that it says, and when you get here, you'll be full. It just tells you keep going. And so most of our tombstones could just say, he was very productive. She did a whole lot. So my guess is that was probably the first time you actually slowed down for a moment. And as soon as you do, you feel differently. And meditation, I don't practice, sitting and meditating for 30 minutes or anything. I think meditation works much better for me if I do it all day.
Active meditation.
And to me, mindfulness, which is the big meditation word now, mindfulness in my mind really means pay attention. Be here, be present. And most of us are not. Most of us are thinking about the future. Oh, after this podcast, they're going to do this, 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 this. Oh, and I've only got 2 hours and then, or the past. Oh man, I messed that up, and then I got to go back and fix that, and you get the storm up there. Meditation. When I teach meditation, I teach with it kindness because
To oneself?
yeah, learning to be kind because what's going to happen if a client goes home and they actually try it, they're going to come back and it'll be some version of, oh, I tried the meditation thing and I'm not any good at it. And it didn't seem to help. And I said, well, how long did you do it? Well, I did it for like the 15 minutes, but, and I say, well, maybe I didn't make it clear what the goal of meditation is. The goal is not to even relax. The goal is to be with whatever is. So if you sit down to meditate and you start thinking about something else, you got to go, oh, I'm thinking about something else. And what I want to do is meditate. And then you come back. So meditation is your mind wanders off. You see it, you bring it back. And you do that kindly. Because then most people, after they get clear on that, they come back and they go, I just can't do it. I'm just no good at it at all. Okay, well, there's no kindness there. And when you go, if you wander off for 10 minutes before you catch yourself, you didn't do anything wrong. Just so my kind of meditation is, I got this guy who sits here. I don't know why he sits over here. And I couldn't count it, but it's hundreds of times a day saying things like, breathe for me. And then the other part that he's talking to goes, oh, yeah, thanks, man. There wasn't breathing, or he'll say, slow down a little bit. If I'll be working on a computer and I'm trying to do something on some website and it's just not working. I mean, I get crazy because in my mind, things ought to just work. I mean, this is just silly. And then so I started to get frustrated. And then I hear this guy go, step away from the computer. And then most of the time I'm like, well, I think I could just step away from the computer and breathe. And it may take him 3 times before I'll actually get up, and then if I wait hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, come back to it, boom, it works easily because it was a glitch on their side that I was never going to be able to fix. So that's my meditation, and the other part of it is if you listened to the inside of my brain, you would hear conversations. That's what I've learned to do because I have all these different parts and they've all got something to say.
Right.
So there's conversations going on. It's like, yeah, this and do that, and oh yeah, 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 we do. Don't forget this thing over here. Oh yeah, and they'll throw out 4 or 5. It's like, what do you guys want to do first?
Yep.
And so reducing the stress and anxiety, I'm not burning up the resources in this fight between parts. And so meditation really helps with that. And then best my knowledge, it really does activate what's called your parasympathetic. All of this is in our, what do we call that one?
Fight or flight.
Yeah, it's about the fight, flight, flight, freeze.
Right.
It's about how your nervous system plays
Electrical
a
points, I
part.
think, is what we called it.
Yeah, we are. We run on electricity.
Sure we do.
So you want to take care of that. And there was some other point, and now I've lost it.
Well, you were going down about the parasympathetic.
Oh yeah, yeah. That we have two nervous systems in a sense. It doesn't really work exactly this way, but a parasympathetic, sympathetic, and they work in tandem. They can't work this way. So if one goes up, the other goes down. High sympathetic means low parasympathetic means you're on alert. And so you're going to cut off blood supply to your frontal lobe, be able to think straight. You're going to cut off blood supply to your gut. We don't have time to digest food. Right? And all sorts of changes are going to happen. Right. If you have countless arguments going on inside your head, you're doing this. If you get those parts together to where they're friends and they support each other, this happens. So it's a matter of being able to navigate your nervous system and regulate it in a way that you want. Sometimes you want to be like this. Sometimes you want to be like this, and learn to move that, which means you have to be present in your body to even know where it is. So, yeah. What was the topic of all of this?
We started a conversation based on us, or at least me
Oh, the
personally, getting
mind-body
hit and the
thing.
mind-body
Yeah.
connection. And, I think we've made enough, we've stated enough evidentiary fact to conclude that it certainly exists in some context. I
Well,
learned a lot.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, somebody wants to talk to me about the mind-body connection. I end the debate pretty quickly. I go, well, of course there is. I guess you're speaking of this up here, kind of the mind, and then everything down here being the body. And they go, yeah. And I go, does mind look connected?
Mhm. Yeah,
I mean, so yeah, everything affects everything else. That's the butterfly effect.
right.
And everything works as a system. So,
And what I learned in this episode is that in order to feed one thing, you're likely taking from another thing.
if your resources are low, if you're taking really good care of yourself, you're going to have enough resources to get you through the day.
If
Yeah, yeah. but very few people are taking good care of themselves in terms of keeping enough fuel in the tank, and they're burning it up, chasing this golden ring that doesn't exist, and or along with that, they're burning up, their resources by trying to figure everything out and do it perfectly and get people around them to like them and worrying about what's going to happen when they go home because they had a fight last night. And I mean, you're burning up that fuel.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
No, and that's a great analogy. And I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Chicago, and
mhm,
Eddie and I live in the Atlanta metro now. But there was an acknowledgement or an awareness around this kind of seasonal attitude disorder, that would happen in the winter months where,
mhm,
the sun doesn't come up till darn near, 8 o'clock and it's dark at 4:15 and,
yeah,
you're going to school or work in the dark, you're coming home in the dark,
yeah,
it's cold, it's wet, the holidays, there's a lot of running around and people would get depressed legitimately. And
mm,
that's why that acronym SAD, seasonal attitude disorder or aptitude, whatever it is, but I don't even know. But
yeah,
that was something that was recognized. I
mhm.
don't recall an explanation as to what was going on physiologically, um, but the
Well,
attitude was you were
yeah.
depressed because
I'll tell you one thing that happens. Researchers were trying to figure out how birds knew it was time to migrate. They did all kinds of stuff to them, trying to get them to not migrate, because then they would know what they did is how they know. The thing that kept them from knowing when to migrate was they painted the top of their heads black. And the reason that affected them is because what a bird is doing, I believe it's in the pineal gland for all of us, is they're measuring the length of the day, sun up to sundown. And when the day gets this long, we go. So I tell you that story to answer your question because we need to get outside, even if it's cold, even if it's cloudy, because our clocks and it's clocks. We don't have a clock. There's a whole lot there too, but your clocks get set by being outside. And they're constantly checking where the day is. And we stay inside all the time. And with the artificial lights, and we get all screwed up. Then we're off of our routine. Then we're starting to feel that. So the basics are eat as healthily as you can and eat the amount of calories you burn. And just do that. Get some exercise. And yeah, I'm not talking about go to the gym for 2 hours. Walk down to the end of your street if it's, 200 or 300 yards. That's good. Okay. And go outside. Go outside. Even if it's just for a few minutes to let your body go, oh, okay, this is what time it is. Those three things, very few of us do very well. And they are basics. They are basics. If there was some class on being a human, before we were born, that would be right there.
yeah.
Do this.
Yeah, no, it's no doubt. I mean, as I become more aware, and a lot of this is due to the way social media has changed the way we become aware, based on preferences and algorithmic activity and so forth. But as I become more aware of, the mind-body connection, circadian rhythms,
Yeah.
grounding, letting the sunrise actually hit your retina, being outside, barefoot. That's another topic for another day, I guess. But it's and this is all. I mean, I'll be 50 in February. I didn't. I'm just now learning this. None of this was taught to me in school. But I think there's just becoming a lot. My perception, and maybe it's the bubble that I'm in, but my perception is there's just seems to be a lot more awareness and an appreciation for what was maybe understood and time's gone by or we've just developed, it seems to me that we've just developed this way of living that contradicts what the body
Oh, oh,
wants.
absolutely. And it started with the railroads.
Do tell.
That's a whole story there. Yeah, of how we got away from it. And, imagine living in what would be considered a modern time, but no clocks. And if you lived in a, regular town, you got a farm out here, you're going to go see the doctor. You don't call the doctor and work through 47 times of pushing the button to get to the wrong person. You just get on your horse and ride down to the doctor's office. And you'll get there when you get there. And if
Right.
you run into some friends, you'll sit and chat with them as long as you want to before you go to the doctor. And then you're walking to the doc's office. There's your doctor appointment. He does something and you get on your horse and go home. And sun comes up through their windows. You get out of bed, if not just before that. And when the sun goes down, they're ready to go to bed. They're winding down.
Yeah.
I mean, that is just, we're not even close to that. And most of the deaths in this country, anyway, are caused by poor lifestyle habits, things that you absolutely have control over. We get pushed so hard and we buy into it that self-care isn't even on the list.
Yeah. Well, your lips to God's ears. I mean, I know we've made a commitment and have been efforting to inform as many people as we can through the work of this podcast of the benefits of the acknowledgement and the recognition and hopefully some outreach for those that think, well, maybe I could be a little kinder to myself. Maybe I don't have to feel this way. Or
Mhm.
maybe there is a better path. Or maybe someone can show me a different way. Because one thing I've learned in the conversations that we've had is that the interconnectivity of life and relationships and the human experience and the self-talk and the self-care, and the more I learn about the science behind it, the more captivated I become. But the reality is, awareness, in my opinion, precedes progress. And if you're
Mhm.
experiencing something that you would like to experience less, or if you're not experiencing as much of things that you might want to experience more, and you're just overwhelmed perhaps with life, one thing I know to be absolutely true, and I think Eddie would agree, that a conversation with a licensed psychotherapist to delve a little bit deeper into what you had referred to earlier in this episode, which is what brought that about, what caused that feeling, and acknowledging that feeling. And then with compassion and curiosity and kindness, getting to a place where we can not ignore or disregard, but at least have an awareness about why you are feeling the way you're feeling, recognize it, and then perhaps through the consistent counsel of a really excellent therapist who receives therapy, you can start to acknowledge and recognize a new path forward. And it may resemble, ironically, an older path, but I don't know. I just it warms my heart every time we get to this place in the episode where it's like common sense to a person like me, and hopefully someone listening or viewing, that
Yeah.
you know what, you don't have to suffer in silence.
No, you don't. And there's way too many people doing that. And there are people that aren't counselors who know how to comfort you. And sometimes that's monumental because no one comforted us after they were mean to us. We were all alone. So if someone comforts you there, that's a new experience. So be kind of everybody. You don't know what they're going through. And everybody struggles. Everybody has worries and things that they're really battling with. So be kind to them as best you can. Make the world a little bit better place.
I'm with you, brother. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another stellar episode of Couch Trip Therapy for Everyday Life. That's your therapist, Eddie Reece. My name's Billy Courtright. We'll keep coming back. Our next episode will launch next week. We'll see you soon. Any final words, partner?
No, we got to talk about that bestie thing.
There you go. I look forward to that. That'll be a conversation for a future episode. Bye bye for now.